The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Good to be back from break. I've got a story that I think people will find very, very interesting from my weekend after the break, and maybe we'll hear from Pat a little bit as well. If he wants to share, we will see. It's always unpredictable what Pat will or won't want to share.
We'll see if I want to open up. You know, I think it'll take a little while before I really feel comfortable in front of the bonus show audience again. It's been a little while. We'll see.
Yes, it's been almost 5 full days, and that's a very, very long time. So listen, Netflix has pledged. Netflix has a bunch of Netflix originals now, and they have pledged that they are going to start cutting down depictions of smoking cigarettes in original programming that's aimed at young viewers. And I actually specifically have thought about this before, which is that one of the reasons smoking became so popular to begin with in whatever it was, 60s, 70s, when the big tobacco campaigns were going, 60s, 70s, 80s, is that in the absence of nearly enough information about the health risks of smoking, there were tons of portrayals of smoking as rugged, individualistic, manly when it came to depictions of men, classy when it came to depictions of women, with often thinner, longer cigarettes portrayed as more delicate and feminine or whatever. And certainly that would have some impact on people's decisions to or not to smoke. And of course, now we have so much more information about the undeniable reality that smoking's terrible for your health, and that's fine. For kids, though, maybe the depictions still have a lot of that sort of visual appeal of, wow, that person looks really cool as they're smoking. One such program that has caused such controversy is Stranger Things, which is, I mean, listen, I've watched the first 2 seasons and I'm probably done. I've heard that the third one was even worse than the second, which I already didn't like. It is unclear to me, Pat, whether it's a kids show per se. I mean, a lot of the actors are kids in it. I don't know that I'd say it's a kids show, but certainly lots of kids watch it. So I guess
what do you mean by kids? Like teenagers, like a 15 to 18-year-old age range, or even younger than that?
Well, I mean, that's the question. I guess what Netflix is focused on is 15 to 24, which includes mostly people who are adults, but also there's the question of programs that even like 10 to 15-year-olds watch. I mean, my sister, when she was 12, loved Stranger Things. So I don't know exactly what they even mean by kids here, but certainly it's a show that appeals more. I would call it a young adult show. It's the equivalent of like young adult fiction versus like a kid's book or an adult show. Is that sort of fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the right decision, too. I guess maybe, you know, if the show takes place 10, 20, 30 years ago when the show was more, when smoking was more popular, it makes sense to kind of depict things how they were. So like smoking rates, especially among youth back then, were, I think, higher. And so if you're doing something that's kind of historical in nature, you want to make sure that you depict that, right? You don't want to have any anachronisms in there. But I think they should have done this a long time ago. Broadcast shows on like TV have sort of phased out smoking, especially when it comes to appealing to younger audiences. And now Netflix is finally coming around to it. I think it's a long time coming.
I hate that this is even a thing, to be perfectly honest. It's like at this point, we've just known for so long that smoking is not good for you. I get it. Stranger Things takes place in the 80s when more people smoked in the United States than now. So there's the question of, is it historically accurate to show that there's a lot of smoking going on? It's just like, it doesn't really drive the story forward in any way that I noticed. You know, I remember watching Mad Men, which takes place in the late 60s and early 70s, and everybody is smoking. And I understood it. It's part of the atmospherics of the entire time. Smoking as something that was more prevalent and even associated with certain types of leisure and whatever else. It's just, I wish that we could just get into a direction where it's merely seen as a relic of the past. Like, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter if you watch Mad Men and people are smoking or Stranger Things and people are smoking, because now just nobody smokes because it's just so obviously a bad thing to do. That's not the reality. So then it becomes something that Netflix has to put together a policy on.
Yeah, maybe far into the future, like a show comes out in the year 2050 and that's depicting reality in the 1980s. Maybe then they can go back to showing people smoking, because hopefully by then most of society will have gotten over it. But I definitely think this is the right move. Apparently there was a study done by the U.S. Surgeon General in 2014 that said if you made any movie with smoking in it, rated R, it would save 1 million people's lives, because, you know, children wouldn't be getting into the cigarettes, having seen it in the movies. That's stunning to me, assuming that the methodology of that study is accurate.
You're saying
That's crazy.
they rate it R instead of PG-13, and based on
Exactly
the
right.
number of kids who won't see it, it could potentially save 1 million lives.
Yeah, and that's actually stunning to me. That's a good amount of people.
Incredible if true. First time I've heard it, but it does. The logic of it does make sense. The number of 1 million seems like a lot, but I think the underlying logic to some degree must probably be true or not. Who knows? Anyway, I like the policy from Netflix. I just am a little bit disappointed that we even need to do this type of stuff or talk about it, but we do. Nearly 1/4 of Americans say that they never plan to retire, according to a poll that was recently released. Experts say that illness, injury, layoffs, and caregiving responsibilities often force workers to leave jobs sooner than they like or would like to. So this is so interesting because when I read these poll results, one of the big analyses that was put out was the one I just told you, which is it's not realistic for so many people to say they're never going to retire because so many people end up kind of being forced into retirement or unable to work, either because they get sick or they get injured or they need to take care of somebody or whatever. Fine, that's one interesting analysis. The other analysis is, why do so many people not believe they'll be able to retire? And the answer is because many of them probably won't. So this was seen in many circles as a story about lots of people not correctly understanding kind of how aging works. But my reaction was, wow, we have an economic situation such that 1/4 don't maybe believe they will ever financially be able to retire. And in fact, that's probably an underestimate because a lot of people overstate the strength of their financial positions. Many people just sort of assume by the time I'm X age, I will be able to retire. That's not the case for many people. So that for me was the real headline reaction to this study.
Yeah, and I think there's another angle too, which is that there are so many people out there, especially in America, who just get so much fulfillment out of work, and that makes a lot of sense. Or ideally, you want to have that fulfillment out of work, but they never want to stop working, right? They think that once they retire, they won't have anything to do with their lives. There won't be anything that'll get them out of bed in the morning, and so they just kind of want to stick with it, stay workaholics until the day that they die. I think that's definitely more common in this country than others. It may also just be something that people say, though, because people like to seem as if they're very productive and hardworking. People take a lot of pride in their work, so I think that makes sense, too. And I think that's just how some people are. Some people just, they don't want to ever retire.
Yeah, and I don't know whether we can say that that's a healthy or an unhealthy thing. I mean, people spend a lot of time working, so it is good if you like your job. That's a great thing. At the same time, there is also a degree to which in the United States, and probably other places too, I just don't know because I live here. In the United States, a lot of people's identity is basically their work, period. And whether or not they have kids, you know, sometimes it shifts over to raising a family and having children. But for a lot of people, their identity is effectively tied up in their job. And when people lose jobs, this can be extremely devastating psychologically, as you can imagine. But that, I think, is also a factor that people see themselves as their job in the United States in many ways.
Yeah, it's very common when you meet someone for the first time, the first conversation topic will be what you both do for work.
Sure.
And, you know, you've, of course, lived in other countries. I haven't so much. Is that how conversations go most of the time in other countries? Is that one of the first conversation topics, or do people talk more about, like, what their other interests are, what their family life is? I mean, I'm really not even sure about that.
It's totally uncommon to ask what one does. So like work certainly comes up, but it's definitely not as central. And in fact, I was just at a friend's wedding in the May break. I went to a friend's wedding in Italy, and a lot of the people I spent time with, I have no idea what they do because it just didn't come up. We were there for a wedding. We were there about where do you live in the US? If you were coming from the US, where did you travel to before getting to the wedding, et cetera. And maybe it's because of the setting. I mean, yeah, okay, if you're at a business networking event, it would be more logical to talk about what your job is than if you're at a wedding in Italy, you work in different parts of the US. Who wants to necessarily talk about work while you're there? But I think there definitely is less of an emphasis on that in social situations in most other countries I've been to anyway.
That is interesting. I mean, and some of this is just cultural difference, and it's perfectly fine, I think, for Americans to consider themselves to be more hardworking, to be more about their work, but you have to strike a balance. And I don't think it makes sense for 1/4 of Americans to think that they'll never retire, either because they don't want to stop working, or because they don't have the financial means. I wish more people could understand that life isn't entirely about working, and I don't think everyone understands that here in this country.
At the same time, it's also a financial reality that a lot of people genuinely cannot afford to retire, many more than, and many of whom would like to. And that's another issue on the other side of the coin. So listen, I think some people might find this funny. I was at a bunch of different, over the weekend, I was at a bunch of different barbecues and different things for the 4th of July. And at one of them, it was at night. And I have some friends who love to have a fire and sit around the fire. Now, it was so hot and humid here over the weekend that I didn't really think fires were necessary. And it also gets really buggy in certain parts of Western Massachusetts where I was at night. And mosquitoes just destroy me. I don't know if it's the South American-born carbon dioxide that I emit, which they find more appealing. I've never gotten a straight answer. I'm kind of joking about that one. But in any case, it is true that mosquitoes are more attracted to some people than to others. And we went over there a couple of nights to the same place. And the first night I said, I don't want to stand too close to the fire because it's too hot. I also don't like breathing in the smoke. I've got to do a show. I can't have my voice affected by the smoke, please. How dare they? And I hopefully am not going to be bit. And I got home and I actually had 19 mosquito bites, mostly on my ankles. It was really, really bad. And we were invited back over to the same place, some of my friends gathering there on a different day. And I got there and again, the mosquitoes start going after me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to have to put on the bug spray. This is just crazy. So I went over to where there was a can of, it was dark, remember, because it was only lit by the fire. There was a can of what I believed to be bug spray. I had seen other people using what I thought was this can. And I shake it up and I start spraying it onto my legs. And I don't really notice much other than off, and a lot of those bug sprays have a very particular smell. And I didn't smell anything, but I just thought, oh, maybe they got like the unscented one or something like that. But everything about it, and even the spray on my legs, felt a little weird. And then I heard someone yell from the other side of the fire, "What are you putting on your legs?" And then I looked at the can, and it was Weber gas grill oil. It was it was what's supposed to go on the grill, which was a few feet away, which they had been grilling on before I got there, but were no longer grilling on. And things got pretty ugly at that point. So, of course, some of it got on my shoes. Some of it got on my shorts. I went inside. I started scrubbing my legs down in the sink with soap and water. Then they handed me some baby wipes, which I used on my leg. But needless to say, I still got a bunch of bug bites. I was covered in grease, and I had to go home and ended up showering at like midnight or something like that. But it made for a really funny story, and everybody who was there was laughing hysterically.
That sounds like it could have gotten dangerous, too, because you're more flammable with that stuff on, right? So if you get too close to the fire, your whole leg could just explode. But then you wouldn't have to worry about the bug bites because you would have burnt them off at that point.
Yeah, well, a few people said, now you really do have to stay away from the fire because of that. Yeah, really, really wacky.
Actually, I have a story that's kind of related to that. This happened a few years ago. I went to my friend's family Labor Day party, and there's a lot of drinking that goes on at that household. The father of the house had quite a few beers during the course of the day, and it was at night. We were having a fire at this point, and I think he was just falling asleep, or I don't know, maybe he was just a little bit too intoxicated, but the guy just like falls forward. We're sitting around a fire, and he just falls forward, doesn't even brace himself, and lands in the fire, like putting it out as he falls. And everyone was freaking out, like especially his kids. They're like, "Dad, Dad!" Luckily, he was fine. He wasn't even burnt or anything. But yeah, I think you've had a little bit too much to drink when you start falling face forward into a fire and don't even brace yourself.
Yeah.
So at least that didn't happen to you, especially with that flammable stuff on your legs.
Yes. Well, fortunately, alcohol consumption was not affecting my basic faculties. It was just really dark, and I thought I was spraying off onto my legs, and instead I was spraying some kind of aerosolized olive oil or something like that. Yeah.
I also like the thought of you counting the bug bites and arriving at the number 19. Is that an accurate thing that happened, or was that just to add some details to the story?
It was. I count the next day. I was with I was with some people, and they said, "How many bug bites do you think you got?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's count." I had 19, and then after that second night with the grill oil, it got up to 23, and
wow.
23 total bug bites. Listen. It's annoying, but also when it gets up to 23, the odds that one may be carrying something also starts to increase, and that's not good.
That's true. One theory I've heard, and I don't even know if this is true at all, is that bugs are attracted to certain blood types. Could that be the case, or is that just a myth? Like, what is your blood type? Do you even know?
I don't know what my blood type is. In fact, someone was recently asking me this, and they said, how do you not know? And I said, I just have no idea what my blood type is.
What if you're in absolute emergency and you're bleeding out, and if you have some spare blood around, but you don't know which blood type you are? How would you know which spare blood to grab?
I would know, and this is exactly why people say you should really know what your blood type is in case it ever comes up, both as a recipient and possible donor. It's just easier to know. I think next time I have a checkup and they do normal blood work, I'll just ask my doctor to include the blood type test, and then I'll know. And
for anyone out there in the audience who wants to know, and I'm sure there are many people who do, I'm O positive. And I think if you share your blood type, it could end up on your Wikipedia page. We could include it in the show's bio. There's a lot of stuff we can do with that information.
Is O positive the one that can receive blood from anyone or give blood to anyone?
Ooh, I don't know. Apparently, I don't know about apparently, I don't know as much about this topic as I thought I did.
Yeah.
But I know it is one of the more common ones, along with A positive.
Interesting. All right, that does it for today. We'll have a new show and a new bonus show tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.